2K just dropped the ringside report for MyGM, so let's break it down and see what all the little details and new features they're adding this year in MyGM. So this information comes straight from the 2K website, where there is the ringside report for MyGM, and you can see immediately the draft screen looks the same, but that's not what we're talking about here. There's lots of new little features that they talk about in the ringside report, so let's dive in again. So they're changing the way that you set up the season. Nothing too crazy, but the biggest change is that season modes are now default 50 weeks. So you're almost getting that full calendar year of events. To accommodate this, they are of course increasing the values that you have available to you at the start of the game. So already the default now is $5 million that you can start with when you're drafting your show and creating your show, but it does go up to $7 million. Now, I probably should explain a little bit that I'm not the biggest fan of MyGM. I probably should have said that up front. I'm not the biggest fan. So when I go into this mode, there is like a level of kind of pessimism, alright? I'm not the biggest fan of MyGM. However, I do really like the SmackDown vs. Raw implementation of GM mode. So when I'm looking at MyGM, I'm kind of looking at features that I want from a more traditional GM mode, and not necessarily the arcade style MyGM that has existed in the game for a couple years now. With that being said, when I look at things like this and I see the fact that we can now increase the starting budget to $7 million, it kind of shows to me that maybe there is a way for me to play the game the way that I kind of want to play it. Especially when it says here specifically that the higher starting budgets will increase the average roster size per show to approximately 20 to 35 superstars. Now that does actually put us somewhere around where the SmackDown vs. Raw rosters were. So I'm optimistic now, okay? So I'm always a pessimist when it comes to MyGM, but when I'm looking at this and I'm seeing we're getting a bigger budget and we're getting better starting roster, okay, I'm starting to see the vision here. There is a note here as well that the extreme difficulty that was added in either last year or the year before, a lot of people apparently found that easy. So they have added in a brand new difficulty called Immortal. Immortal, I presume, is going to have like the hardest possible AI difficulty and possibly will cheat and scum its way to ruin your show. I'm personally not going to play that. I don't even like the mode in general, so why would I even bother playing it on a harder difficulty? But I have watched other people's videos and I do appreciate that this is actually something the community wants. So I'm not going to get mad at the fact that the 2K devs are actually giving people what they want. So going through the actual motions of drafting a show, if you haven't played MyGM before, it literally puts you in the shoes of a general manager of one of the WWE shows, and you draft, you take rounds and you choose a superstar that you want, and then after X amount of rounds you can then kind of opt out or you can keep going, and you then draft your full roster. And now this year they have added one new feature to the draft. just one. You're now able to filter so you can filter the draft based on their role, class, stamina and popularity. But now you can do ring level as well, so you can now basically filter for every single category that's on there. I mean, sure, the only thing this confirms to me really is that the specialist class, the classes are still in the game, and I hate the classes now. If you know anything about MyGM, this is where it differs from SmackDown vs. Raw. MyGM has these things called classes. Now, my GM mode from SVR did have these kind of classes, but not in the way that MyGM has it. So superstars are assigned different categories, different classes based on fighter, bruiser, cruiserweight, or giant, and there may be others. Oh, there's specialist, and there may be others, I can't remember. But basically, it's like a kind of rock, paper, scissors. So like fighters and bruisers go well together, so you can only really put them together. Cruiserweights and giants, likewise, can only go together, so it's kind of like this weird, you want to book your roster based on the fact that you want your roster to have like X amount of bruisers and X amount of fighters, and then you kind of plan out who you want to face each other. And I hate this system. I hate it with a passion. Now, thankfully, there is a category, there's a class called Specialist, and a Specialist can face anyone. I think people like Specialists are usually like your Finn Balor's, your AJ Styles, and your Baileys and stuff like that, and they can face anyone. So the good news is you can put anyone against a specialist and you get a good match. But it's just weird that like the main event of WrestleMania is all, well, at the time when the first MyGM came out was like Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, for example. And in the game, if you booked that as a WrestleMania main event, it was apparently the worst match you could ever do. But if you do it in any other game mode, obviously, if you do it in your brain, it's obviously an amazing match. But because their classes don't mix, the game will tell you off and you'll get a bad rating for it. I have never liked this system, and I'm really disappointed that the classes are still here. That aside, you can create a custom draft pool. And what I like to do is I go through the draft pool and I change everyone to specialist. And that way you can basically put on any match that you want. You will very often get emails saying that, oh, you should think about varying it up and you should do other matches. But honestly, I just don't care. Like, I have zero interest in the class system. So my recommendation to you, if it still works in 2K26, is to do a custom draft pool, put everyone to specialist, and you'll have a much better time. This year, they've added in way more match types. Of course, there are 4 new match types in the game. There's 3 stages of hell, dumpster match, I quit, and inferno match. And thankfully, they have all been implemented here in MyGM, so it's good that that cohesion exists. Even though they're getting added to the game, they are going to be used in MyGM, which is very, very cool. I actually do think it is especially cool to have 3 stages of hell added into MyGM, because obviously technically in the back end, in the code and how complicated things are, MyGM supporting 3 stages of hell, which is like 1 match that's actually 3 matches, it's probably quite technically tricky. So I do appreciate that that's been added in. If we scroll down here, you can see there is a long list of things that have been added to the game, at least in terms of matches. So we're looking at 5-way, 6-way, 3 versus 3, triple threat tag match, 8-way matches, 4v4, fatal 4-way tag matches, 1v2, 1 versus 3, and 1 versus 4 handicap matches, as well as you can now choose on a weekly basis ladder match, battle royale, bloodline rules, I quit, inferno, dumpster, and 3 stages of hell. Now, there are some weird omissions here, and we're going to talk about them very shortly, but let's move on to PLEs. I didn't actually know this until quite recently, that MyGM doesn't feature every single pay-per-view that WWE does, PLE, or whatever they call them these days. I didn't know this, and I'm scratching my head like, you know, if you're doing like a 20-odd week storyline, I totally understand that you're not going to have every single pay-per-view. I totally get that. If you're doing a 50-week schedule, I would expect to have pretty much every single pay-per-view, but that's not the case. Before we get to the weird news, we're going to talk about the good news. The good news is the Elimination Chamber is one of the pay-per-views that have been added to the game, but you can see here it features 2 NXT, 2 SmackDown, and 2 Raw people in the Elimination Chamber. And if you don't know how PLEs work in MyGM, as of last year, they added in this kind of cross-brand functionality. So when you are doing these cross-branded pay-per-views, they have matches, usually 3 matches that are cross-brand matches. So in this case, you've got the opener, which is the women's Elimination Chamber. The main event is probably the men's Elimination Chamber. And then the mid-card is the match that you want to put on for your brand. So it could be whatever you want that show to be. You can still book your main show, but you still have the opener and main event to kind of participate in the cross-branded PLEs. And doing this is very beneficial because if you win, you get a great reward. However, there are risks associated with it. It says here that losers are injured for 3 weeks. There is obviously a high stamina cost. There is a very high ring XP gain and a very high quality boost. So again, there is definitely a good reason to be putting people into this match. But most importantly, the match reward. The match reward in this case being select an opposing brand, a random superstar will be fired from their brand after this week's show, and it cannot be used on the last week of the season. So in this case, basically, if me and you were doing a GM mode, I won this card, I could then use that, and then after the show, you would just randomly lose someone. They would be completely fired, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. Admittedly, those are the things I don't like about MyGM. I don't particularly like the power cards and how they work. I kind of like it to be a bit more competitive and not so much like kind of screwy. I don't know how to quite elaborate on that, but I'm just not a fan of the kind of, I have this card, so I'm going to ruin your show. I would rather it was more, okay, maybe I can invade your show and steal some of your ratings, but ultimately your show is self-contained, and I don't really want to mess with that because that's just how I prefer my GM. On to the weird news then. So we have a list of new and returning pay-per-views for MyGM. We have Backlash, we have Clash in Paris, which is new, Crown Jewel, which is new, we have Hell in a Cell returning, we have Money in the Bank, which is returning, we have Battleground, which is new, Evolution's new, Great American Bash is new, Halloween Havoc is new, Night of Champions is new, No Mercy is new, Worlds Collide is new, Survivor Series War Games is new, SummerSlam's returning, Elimination Chamber is new, and WrestleMania is returning. Now, this is a really weird list of things. Like, I can understand that there's a lot of things on there that give you kind of that cross-branded, there's weird matches you can do with certain things. Like, obviously, the Hell in a Cell returning. Hell in a Cell is awesome. You just do like an Armageddon Hell in a Cell, and Bob's your uncle, that's your main event PLE right there. We get confirmation that Worlds Collide is debuting as well, so maybe like Worlds Collide is kind of a, maybe you have AAA as a brand. It doesn't seem to be here immediately. They haven't said anything about AAA being a part of the brand, but with Worlds Collide added to the game, maybe AAA is a brand. I have no idea. Survivor Series War Games is new this year, and I have to assume that with the improvements to GM mode this year, we can finally have this kind of cross-brand war games. Now that is something that I find really exciting, especially as someone who doesn't even play the mode. Do find it more exciting that, you know, if I was to play this with my friends and my brother, I could imagine that when Survivor Series rolls around, that would be good fun to play. Okay, the elephant in the room then. Where is the Royal Rumble? The Royal Rumble is like the ultimate pay-per-view in the calendar. I mean, WrestleMania is cool. Everyone loves WrestleMania. But if you ask anyone what the second biggest pay-per-view of the year is, PLE, it's always the Royal Rumble. I don't think anybody says anything else. I mean, maybe Money in the Bank, but Money in the Bank is already here. You have a system ready for the Money in the Bank. The Royal Rumble is like such an important part of GM mode. I want my brand to win the main event of WrestleMania. That, when I think back to the SmackDown vs. Raw GM mode, we would have this, like, you put 15 people of your brand. Well, I guess with nowadays you have different brands, right? So that if you've got 3 brands, then it's 10 people per brand. But let's just simplify it. You know, me and my brother, we're playing SmackDown vs. Raw. It'll be 15 for me, 15 for him. And I want my people to win because I want the main event at WrestleMania. So why isn't this included here? I guess I don't want to rag on something that isn't in the game, but I just want to express that, like, I am quite disappointed that the Royal Rumble's not even kind of here at all. Like, you can't choose a Royal Rumble. You can do a Battle Royal, I suppose. That's maybe 6 people, right? But you can't do a Royal Rumble, and I don't know. That's pretty disappointing. Something that is considerably less disappointing, though, is they have changed the way that the kind of booking the shows actually works. This year, they've added the ability to do intergender wrestling in MyGM. So you can now do male versus female matches, should you want to, in MyGM. However, it does incur a small cost. For some reason, I don't really know why, the intergender matches cost $5,000. I can't think of a reason why that would be the case. I'm trying to think. Like, I have a bit of development, not really development history, but like I know how games are made. Like I work in IT, and I know how these things are planned and decided on, and like, I'm not trying to be a professional here, but I cannot think in my head why there is a reason to put a cost on those matches. The only thing I can maybe think of is that theoretically, if you do have intergender wrestling in your show, you're kind of expanding your roster. You're basically doubling your roster in a way. So if you are if you're out of men and you're out of women to put on like regular rivalries and storylines, I guess you can put on intergender matches as kind of a last resort just to fill a spot on the card. And maybe that was the thought process here for adding a cost onto the intergender matches. But yeah, it just seems really odd to me. I can't really, other than the fact that it expands your roster, I can't really think of a reason why it would cost money to put on those kind of matches. There are 2 key features that have been added in this year as well. So they are finally adding in support for custom title belts for offline play. So if you are for some reason running a AAW MyGM then you can technically run it with AEW championships. Now, it doesn't just have to be AEW, it could be Ring of Honor, it could be anything, it could be WCW. Maybe the game doesn't have the WCW title that you want, so you can download the WCW title off of Community Creations and you can import it into your MyGM, which I think is a win to the highest degree. Maybe this is the start of adding in way more customization options in MyGM, because at the moment, if this is the only thing you can do, you can import custom characters and using the custom draft pools, and you can add in custom championships for offline play. Maybe in the future they will allow us to use custom shows, maybe some that you download online, maybe some that you create yourself. Either way, it would be very cool to see the kind of customization evolve, especially seeing that like universe mode lets you do anything. So letting MyGM have some of that customization, I think, is a win. Now, one of the absolute biggest features they've added in this year is the double booking. Now, double booking is a double-edged sword. It's dangerous, right? It's a risky decision to do. In the previous games, you were only able to put superstars into kind of one or the other. They were either doing a match or a promo. Now you can actually theoretically put someone in a promo and a match on the same card. Now, the example given here is that if you do a match and then a promo, theoretically during that match, let's say LA Knight here, LA Knight could get injured, and if he does get injured during his match, he will not be able to cut a promo later on the show. As you might imagine, if the promo is cancelled, you will not get any of the money or anything that it costs to put a promo on back. So basically, if LA Knight is in a match and he's scheduled for a promo and you lose that promo, you're out of money and that's it. You don't get to reschedule anything, you just lose money. So of course, the obvious thing to do then would be to maybe do your promo before your match, and that's a perfectly viable thing to choose. I think what's really good here is adding that kind of element of strategy in a way. So you've got to be careful about how you plan your shows, because if you end up booking it the wrong way and something goes wrong, then your show will not go as you expect and it could end up turning the tide in the rating. It says here as well, for players who are competitive with their friends, they're making changes to the way that power cards work. Now, previously you were able to apparently trade 5 superstars during the trade window. They have now reduced this to 3, but they've opened up 2 of the slots for power cards. So during the trading window, you are now able to basically trade up to 3 superstars and 2 power cards should you want to trade that during your trade window. For players like me that don't particularly like the power cards, they are adding in the ability to somewhat remove them. Now, there is no way to remove them fully from the game, but they are adding an option to remove the power card store. So if the game is to either give you power cards or your opponent power cards, it'll only be earned through PLEs, perks, commissioner goals, and seasonal challenges. They cannot be purchased from the store. There are 2 little bits here as well about the difficulty timer. So during the options, you can actually set a show timer. So last year they did offer an ability to change the way that you book shows. If you're doing like multiplayer, you can actually set a timer for booking. So if your opponent is taking too long to book, you can set a timer so that they have to book within that time frame. Otherwise it will forfeit and they'll just have to go with whatever they have booked or nothing. Apparently people were finding it a little bit overwhelming, I guess. So now they're allowing you to manually start the week, so that way you do have time to prepare in between shows, so the timer doesn't start immediately. And the final little tweak here is that when you are playing or spectating matches, entrances can now be skipped, which is good, so it lets you get into the matches just a little bit quicker, and I think will generally help the mode just progress just a little bit smoother. Interestingly, we were just talking about SmackDown vs. Raw, as I always tend to do. It seems here that there is a new promo type, so there is now an invasion promo type, which means you can send a star to go and attack the opposite brand in an attempt to steal some of their fans. Now, of course, just like SmackDown vs. Raw, the amount of fans that you steal is based on promo skills and whether it is a good or bad promo. I guess it says here that a bad promo will make you look bad and could potentially lose you fans, whereas a good promo will, of course, bring people into your show. So much like the SmackDown vs. Raw series, this promo type is always a risk and you never really know how it's going to go. Sometimes it works out, most of the time it actually doesn't, so it's a risky venture. So 2K obviously realized that 50 weeks is quite a long session, and to make up for that, at the 25-week mark, you will get an option to push 6 superstars from your roster to boost their stamina and morale. So of course, as you are, I'm talking about booking shows and just putting on the shows, which is really all I kind of care about. But there is this whole roster morality system in play here. So you always need to keep your superstars happy. You need to give them what they want. They always have demands and needs that you need to meet. And in this case, stamina and morale are obviously big parts of that. So morale based on whether you're making good or bad decisions for those superstars. The stamina part obviously plays a part for their injuries. At the mid-season part, you can choose 6 people and it'll obviously give those people a boost for their stamina and morale. So you can probably kind of keep them going a bit longer. Whether you want to kind of use that on your tippy top guys just to keep them happy and keep them going, or maybe you want to keep that on your or you maybe want to use it on your mid card people who are maybe like kind of not really where they want to be and maybe kind of ready to leave for another show. You could use this to kind of keep them going just that little bit longer. Bit of a long one this time, but trust me, we are almost at the end here. The general managers have been added and reworked this year. So again, you can choose your general manager for your show and they come with unique perks and abilities that only they have. So we can see here they have added in a whole bunch of people. So now there is a full GM roster of 20 general managers, and that goes from Adam Pearce, Nick Aldis, Paul Heyman, Stephanie McMahon, Xavier Woods, Tyler Breeze, Eric Bischoff, Mick Foley, William Regal, Teddy Long, Ava, Shawn Michaels, Sensational Sherry, Miss Elizabeth, Mr. Fuji, and CM Punk. And this year, they have added in Bobby the Brain Heenan, Stacy Keibler, and the anonymous Raw General Manager. Now, it does say the anonymous GM, and there is a picture here for the anonymous General Manager. Now, I'm assuming that this is the anonymous Raw GM that famously terrorized Raw for a lot of my kind of teenage years. But it does just say anonymous general manager, so this could maybe be something from My Rise or something to that effect, but my brain immediately goes to anonymous Raw GM. 2 little things of note here is that they have added the ability to randomize GMs and brand selections. Cool, I guess that's fine. I mean, you pick the character and you pick the brand, and each has their kind of unique abilities. I guess randomizing just takes that choice out of your hands and just lets you kind of randomize whatever you want. So I guess it's good. It gives people options, and that's okay. And general managers who are playable within the game and have move sets are now available in the draft with no restrictions. So that means you can have CM Punk as your GM and CM Punk on your roster, and they will actually make demands of you just as they normally would. Now, we have just heard as well that Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce are being added to the game as wrestlers. So again, it uses CM Punk as the example here, but I'm assuming, of course, if you were to hire Nick Aldis or Adam Pearce for your show and you are playing as those characters in the general manager mode, then they will obviously make requests just as you. It would be very cool if they had unique interactions somehow. I don't know how that would work exactly, but I just think it would be cool if there was any kind of little Easter eggs in there. With 50-week seasons, they have added in new seasonal challenges and made some adjustments to the other seasonal challenges. So your players will now receive up to 20 seasonal challenges per season, and every 5 they will compete will earn them a Hall of Fame trophy. The example given here is Devil Incarnate, which is given to Adam Pearce for the most 3 Stages of Hell matches. As we wrap up here, the other new additions are, of course, new shakeups, new slammies, new commissioner goals, new emails, power cards, tweets, new superstar perks, revised logistic unlocks, don't know what that means, required number of superstars for draft has been slightly increased, timer ticking noise at specific intervals has been shortened, and tuning for all of the above. So overall, MyGM is getting some really good additions this year, lots of really cool stuff. Obviously, adding in all the match types available elsewhere in the game in GM mode is a plus. I'm glad that that's being added. Likewise, raising the budget is great because it means that I can hire more people and put on a better show that I actually want to put on. And overall, it just seems like the system's getting more and more refined every single year. The only downsides that I personally see is the fact that, one, it still isn't really the GM mode that I kind of want. I still really want that simulation-based SmackDown vs. Raw GM mode that realistically is never going to come back. But I'm just not a fan of this arcade style, play power cards and screw your person over. I just want to book the show, do some budget, some morale stuff, and just put on like the best show I can with the popularities and the morales and just the way it used to be, just with more stuff, you know. And MyGM ain't doing it for me, but there are some great additions here. Likewise, when they talk about the calendar and they added all these new calendar, like PLEs to the calendar, and the Royal Rumble is not there, it just makes me think that like it's just the biggest oversight. Like War Games, I think, is a great addition, especially for those kind of cross-branded PLEs where you do want to face your friends and you do want to screw over the other people. I think that War Games is a really good match to have in there, especially for that kind of competitive edge. But the Royal Rumble, man, it's the goddamn Royal Rumble. And to have the main event of WrestleMania, I know the main event of WrestleMania is probably some cross-brand match anyway, but just the idea that like you can influence WrestleMania through the Royal Rumble and you can still have that cooperative experience through Royal Rumble, I just think it's really disappointing that the Royal Rumble isn't there this year. Again, it's a yearly game, so we're only talking about this year. Maybe it makes it in next year. But that's going to be us for today. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of 2K26's GM mode is going to be like. Are you going to play it? Are you like me and you're kind of waiting for a SmackDown vs. Raw style game that will probably never come? Well, like me, if you're going to live off the hopium of a potential SmackDown vs. Raw GM mode, then you might want to hit the subscribe button. Oh, it's over here now, at the subscribe button, and you can join me along in all these other WWE 2K26 ringside reports. With that being said though, that is us for today, so thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.